If you've never lived here in South Carolina before, you may be surprised at some of the neighborhoods that we have and the homes that are within those neighborhoods. In this video, we'll discuss all the practical things that I would want to know regarding homes, communities, utilities, insurance, all of those things if I were going to move to Greenville. Let's do it. As always, my name is Sawyer, your friend in real estate here in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's our goal with this channel that we are your #1 resource for all the things that you need to know about your relocation to Greenville. So if you find this information helpful, please do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment in the comments. We would love to meet you there in the comments. And ultimately, reach out to me to discuss your relocation here to our area. So first things first, what are the communities like here in Greenville? And when you come and visit on your first or third time, you'll quickly notice that we don't have a ton of master plan communities. You know, when I say master plan, communities that come to mind would be communities that you'll probably often see in places like Texas or California or Florida, where you have thousands of houses in one neighborhood. You don't really see that here in Greenville. Most of the communities here in Greenville are going to be 50 to a few hundred houses. There's going to be 1 or 2 exits and entries into the community. And a lot of these communities, they're not going to be connected to each other. They're often one-off, and they're usually on 2 to 4 lane highways that you would have to get on to go to grocery stores or the movies or work or school. I mean, you're really not going to have amenities within these communities because they're just simply not big enough. So Greenville has a good mix of older communities and a lot of newer communities. Now, if you're looking into older homes and that's where you want your focus to be, you have a higher chance of finding a lot that has more mature trees on it. That's a larger lot compared to a newer community, because a lot of these newer communities, you know, they're 0.15 acres to 0.3 acres. Whereas a lot of the older homes that were built in the 20th century, you know, they tend to have a little bit larger lots, a little bit more privacy. So if that's important to you, we might want to focus on older homes. A lot of these newer communities as well are controlled by HOAs or POAs, so a homeowners association or a property owners association. Fun fact though, HOAs here are not that expensive relative to other parts of the country. So I've heard of clients paying thousands of dollars a year, thousands of dollars per year for an HOA. On average here in our area, we'll say you're going to pay $400 or $500 a year for your HOA, unless you live in a much more expensive community that's gated, has really rich amenities. Then you know, you might pay $1,000 to $3,000 a year for an HOA like that. But on average, you'll end up paying about $400 or $500 a year. So that leads to the next question, you know, what are the homes like here? Well, my folks from Florida, you'll quickly find that there's not a lot of homes with all tiled floors. I do have some folks from Florida that are building a house with all tile in the home, and that is probably the first house I've ever had a client build with all tiled floors. It's just not something you see a lot here. Mostly what builders put in their homes are luxury vinyl plank or an engineered hardwood product. And if you're looking at a price point north of $600,000, $700,000, you'll start to see real hardwoods as far as newer houses go. But what we see mostly would be engineered hardwood and luxury vinyl plank. So my folks from Florida might be an adjustment for you, but those are still really good products. LVP, it's weatherproof, kid-proof, grandkid-proof, pet-proof. You know, it's a really durable product, really good product. I work with a considerable amount of people from the Northeast and the North in general. And one of the first questions they always ask me is, Will, are there a lot of basements in Greenville? The answer is always the same. No, there's not a ton of basements, especially in newer houses. Now, in older homes, we do tend to find more basements, but in your newer communities, The builders have them graded in such a way that basements aren't needed. And there's a couple reasons for that. Basements are expensive to build, and that cost gets offset back onto the buyer. So there's a lot more foundation that's going into the house. You have to dig out the basement oftentimes due to the topography here in our area, unless you're on the northern part of the county. So it's just not something we see a lot of. But if you're building a more expensive house, we do see them more often than, say, at a $300,000 to $450,000 price point. Probably one of the funniest stories I have as my time as a realtor is one of now my good buddies. We were sitting at our buyer consultation, and I was like, what do you have to have in your house? And he said, all I gotta have is central heating and air. And I kind of laughed at him. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course, every house is gonna have central heating and air here. Well, he was from Ohio, and apparently in the Northeast and in the North, it's not as common to have air. And then I've had a client from Santa Monica out in California, same thing. He did not have central HVAC in his house either. So every house here in the Southeast is gonna have central heating and air. It's a must. There's maybe 2 or 3 weeks out throughout the year where you're not gonna have to use it. But pretty much every other time it's gonna be a little too hot or it's gonna be a little too cold for it to be comfortable in your house to not use your HVAC. Another thing to think about would be trash pickup and other utilities. So unless you're living in the city of Greenville or in the immediate area around the city of Greenville, or say Simpsonville or Greer, you're gonna have to pay for private trash pickup. Now there's a lot of companies who offer this, and it's really not that expensive. We have a service through O'Neill, and I think it's 20 or 30 bucks a month. So super cheap. Definitely, if you don't have public pickup, you can certainly get private pickup at an affordable price. And for other utilities, so like I just mentioned, you'll have central heating and air. That'll be lumped into your power bill. On average, you can expect $150, maybe $200, depending on how often you run that in the heat of the summer or in the cold of the winter. Water, if it's not included in your, say, condo regime fee, if you're living in a single family home, water is going to be anywhere from 50 to 75 bucks a month. And if you have the pleasure of having gas, that'll be 50 to 70 bucks a month as well. Maybe as high as 100 bucks. So lastly here, let's talk a little bit about title and insurance. So for insurance purposes, I get a lot of questions about flood insurance and floodplains here in Greenville. And admittedly, there's really not a ton of floodplains. Now, there are some major river systems that run throughout the county, like the Reedy and the Innery, the Saluda as well. So if you're close to one of those riverbeds, and if you're in a lowland, your likelihood of being in a floodplain is a little bit higher, but it's really not commonplace here in Greenville County to be in a floodplain. If you are in a floodplain, let's say on average, homeowners insurance here in South Carolina or here in Greenville specifically averages $600 to $1,200 a year. It's like paying another home insurance policy. So that flood insurance is going to be anywhere from $700 to probably $1,000 a year if you're required to pay flood insurance as well. So hopefully all that information was helpful, and hopefully that gives you a little bit better understanding of some practicalities to expect when you're making this move here to Greenville. And if you are thinking about making that move, please reach out to me directly at my cell phone number below or my email below. I would love to chat with you about your possible relocation here to our area. Until next time, stay safe. So if you've been doing your research about Greenville, South Carolina, suburbs that are super popular today, on the Swamp Rabbit Trail, or an extension of the Swamp Rabbit Trail that's going to be built, is we have a lot of cottage-style or maintenance-free living communities. Now, relative to other parts of the Southeast, Greenville still has a pretty low cost of living.